Be the doctor. The brilliant one. The overachiever. The family jewel. At least, I was until I wasn't. I left medical school halfway through my second year. It wasn't scandal, substance abuse, or some dramatic implosion. Just exhaustion. Quiet, creeping exhaustion that hollowed me out from within. The kind no one ever notices because you still smile over cranberry sauce at Christmas dinner. When I walked away, my father didn't speak to me for months. My mother wept into a linen napkin and told the neighbors I was taking a sabbatical. My younger brother, Joshua, stepped smoothly into the vacancy and became the new family trophy, finance degree, a high-rise office in downtown Vancouver, fiancé from an impeccably mannered family, the polished package. And me? I began tutoring older adults in my local community center on how to navigate smartphones and laptops. For money, for clarity, for the comfort of purpose. At first, it felt like rock bottom. Then, unexpectedly, it began to feel like meaning. What began as quiet, one-on-one coffee shop tutorials turned into group lessons at the local library, then into online workshops, and eventually evolved into a fledgling tech education platform. I called it Elderbright. The mission was straightforward: help adults over 60 stay connected in a digital age determined to speed past them. We taught email, video chats, internet banking, digital hygiene, even how to detect misinformation before it swept through every cousin's Facebook feed. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't a billion-dollar idea. But it worked. That week, I helped an 83-year-old named Mrs. George post 2 hip replacements and, with enough attitude to anchor a sitcom, set up Zoom. It took us 40 minutes to configure her microphone. She called me sweetheart and grumbled, "This thing's out to get me." But when the screen lit up and she saw her son's face, 3 provinces away, her hand flew to her mouth. She whispered, "You brought my boy home." Moments like that don't make front pages. But they shift something in people. That's what Elderbright was built for. Within 3 years, we had over 80,000 active users, partnerships with several regional organizations, and a long queue of nonprofits pleading for access in their cities. We were making a difference, one tutorial at a time. But to my family, I was just doing some sort of internet teaching job. They never asked for updates. Never said they were proud. To them, I had wandered off the golden path and vanished into the fog. Never mind that I carved a new road with my bare hands and lit it so others wouldn't lose their way. Last month, at our regular Sunday dinner, my mother served roast lamb and nonchalantly told Joshua's fiancé. Joshua's always been the focused one. Carol, well, she's our free spirit. I smiled, sliced a carrot, and said nothing. Because that's what those of us wearing the disappointment badge do. We stay quiet. We stay cordial. We disappear. But change was coming. And it would begin with a name I hadn't heard in years, spoken by someone who didn't yet know who I truly was. The irony cut deep. I'd built a digital home where thousands of strangers felt seen, yet I couldn't get my own family to ask me a single sincere question. At Elderbright, we were midway through a major redesign, rebuilding our onboarding system to better serve users who'd never touched a keyboard. I just finished testing with a 76-year-old man who wept after successfully FaceTiming his granddaughter. "She thought I was gone," he said. "Now she knows I'm still here." That moment lit something in me no funding news ever had. I mentioned it at dinner the following week. My father responded with a grunt. "Teaching the elderly to push buttons. Real noble." Joshua laughed quietly into his wine. I let it go. They didn't know pushing buttons now meant a robust educational platform powered by adaptive UX, with accessibility features tailored for motor difficulties, voice navigation, and screen readers. They didn't know our email newsletter had a 78% open rate, or that we were being piloted in 3 provincial community centers. They didn't know we were changing more lives each week than most of their quarterly board meetings. Because I hadn't told them. When someone hands you a label like failure, you either rip it off, or you wear it in silence while building something too radiant to be ignored. 2 weeks before Joshua's engagement party, My inbox chimed. Subject: Michelle C. Testimonial submission. Michelle, Joshua's fiancée. I clicked. It was a video, 90 seconds, sent through our Stories That Shine campaign, where users or their families shared how Elderbright had made a difference. In the softly lit clip, Michelle sat beside an elderly woman with warm eyes and a proud smile. This is my grandmother, Rebecca, she began. She lost my grandfather last spring. It was a hard time. But thanks to Elderbright, she stayed connected with us, weekly video chats, even learned to order her groceries online. It gave her back a sense of confidence. And it gave us her. I froze. Michelle had no idea who I was. Hadn't connected the name. She just knew Elderbright had helped her family. I watched the video again. And again. On the third watch, Rebecca turned to the camera and said, softly, "Thank you, Carol. You made me feel human again." That night, my mother called. "Don't forget the engagement dinner on Saturday. We want everything to be perfect." I wasn't sure I should come, I replied. "Why wouldn't you?" she asked too quickly. "Because I'm not sure I belong." A long pause. Then, just, maybe don't go on about your website too much, okay? Michelle's family is very professional. Ivy League. I almost laughed. Understood, I said. No talk of buttons. She missed the sarcasm entirely. I hung up and stared out the window of my flat, watching the lights of Toronto shimmer through the drizzle. My mother had no clue that her future daughter-in-law had thanked me openly, emotionally, for giving her grandmother a lifeline to the world. And I wasn't about to tell her. Not yet. Sometimes, it's best to let the truth arrive on its own terms. In the days leading up to the engagement party, the RSVP card remained untouched on my desk. I knew what they expected, that I'd show up, smile on cue, and blend into the background like an old photograph, technically present, easily ignored. I told myself I'd go. For Michelle. For the grandmother who'd whispered that I helped her feel human again. Not for my family. At a backyard cookout the weekend before, a distant cousin squinted at me over a paper plate and asked, "So, still doing that little online thing?" I nodded, smiled, said nothing. My mother stood right beside me. She didn't correct them. Didn't mention the team I led, the tens of thousands of users, the grants I'd secured. Instead, she offered them more coleslaw. And I stood there, gripping a flimsy plate, trying not to shrink. Never again. Not for them. Back at work, we were finalizing a statewide partnership with the Ontario Public Library Network. Elderbright would soon launch in 12 rural branches, places where residents had more chickens than Wi-Fi. It was meaningful, ground-level work. Meanwhile, at home, my mother was choosing napkin fabrics and sending me Pinterest boards titled appropriate dresses, complete with a note. No black. No pantsuits. Try something soft. Something feminine. I stared at the email like it had grown fangs. My mother adored control, especially over women who refused to be controlled. On Friday, the day before the celebration, I met our newest intern at a quiet cafe, a sharp, inquisitive 19-year-old coder named Jason, fascinated by interface design for aging users. As we spoke, a woman at the next table leaned over. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Carol? From Elderbright?" I blinked. "Yes." "Oh wow," she smiled. "My dad uses your platform. He sends me memes now." I didn't even know he knew what a meme was. Jason looked at me like I'd just sprouted wings. "You didn't tell me people recognize you." "They usually don't," I said. But quietly, that was changing. More emails. More testimonials. A podcast invitation. A slow but steady hum. Outside the walls of my childhood, I wasn't a ghost. I was rising. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I kept replaying Michelle's video, the warmth in her voice, the way she looked at her grandmother. She didn't know me. Not personally. But she believed in something I'd built, forged out of exhaustion, failure, and the stubborn spark of reinvention. And that kind of belief? It was clean. Earned. unshakable. Unlike the conditional affection I still chased from people too blind to offer it. At 3 a.m., I climbed out of bed and pulled a dress from the back of my closet. Not black. Not a pantsuit. A deep, stormy green, sleeveless, streamlined, dignified. Mine. I slipped Michelle's video onto a USB stick. Not to show. Just to have. A small talisman. A reminder that sometimes the ripples we send out stretch farther than we know, reaching strangers, and even calling back the parts of ourselves we thought had vanished. The restaurant shimmered with chrome and candlelight, the kind of place where the shadows were deliberate and the butter came dusted with truffle flakes. I arrived 10 minutes early. I always do. My mother's eyebrows lifted as she spotted me. "Oh, you came. You invited me," I said calmly. "Well, I'm glad." She wasn't. Her eyes flicked to my dress, just a touch too bold, a whisper too confident. I took a seat near the end of the table, comfortably out of view. Joshua and Michelle swept in 15 minutes later, all shine and champagne. Michelle embraced everyone, including me. She didn't say much. Didn't recognize me. Not yet. Not like that. Dinner unfurled in waves of small talk, sparkling wine, and speeches thick with ambition. Joshua's manager gave a toast that smelled like hedge funds. Michelle's father spoke of heritage, honor, and Harvard. I nodded. Quiet. Peripheral. Until the dessert plates were set down. Until Michelle turned toward me, her brow drawn in curiosity. "I've been meaning to ask, Carol, what is it that you do again?" The air changed. My mother's shoulders locked. The room hovered in pause. I took a measured sip of water. "I run a platform that teaches digital literacy to older adults." Michelle tilted her head. "Oh, like tech classes?" "More than that. We design adaptive systems for long-term engagement, interfaces built with accessibility in mind. Large fonts, voice control, screen reader integration, simplified navigation." Michelle blinked. "What's it called?" "Elderbright." Her expression shifted. "No. Seriously? You're Elderbright." I nodded. "I founded it." Her hand flew to her mouth. She glanced at Joshua, then back at me. "You're the Carol? From the Stories That Shine campaign?" Now the room didn't just quiet, it froze. My mother's fork hovered in midair. Michelle's voice cracked slightly. "My grandma, Rebecca, she used Elderbright every single day until she passed. You helped her video call us every Sunday. You gave us more time." I submitted a testimonial. I gave her a soft smile. I saw it. It meant the world. Michelle rose to her feet. "Why didn't you say something?" I shrugged gently. The moment hadn't come yet. She turned to the table. "I don't think any of you understand. This woman built a national platform. From nothing. She's been featured on NPR and Forbes. She's not just helping people, she's changing lives." Aunt Carol gasped. Uncle Edward gave a small cough. My father suddenly found his wine glass fascinating. My mother parted her lips, then pressed them shut again. But Michelle didn't stop. I never imagined I'd meet you. You helped my family more than you know. My grandma never called herself smart until she logged into your platform. That meant something." She sat back down, eyes still on me as if recalibrating who I was. Joshua leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't realize." "You never asked," I replied, steady as stone. The silence that followed didn't sting. This one had weight, reverence. And suddenly, the room felt different. I wasn't being tolerated. I was being seen. As the evening unfolded, conversations turned, and I found myself at their center, not because I inserted myself, but because gravity had shifted. Toasts were hastily edited to include Carol's work, and nods of acknowledgement were aimed directly at me. My mother sat still and straight, her composure a mask cracking around the edges. I could almost hear the machinery of her mind grinding, trying to rewrite the story in real time. But it was too late. I was no longer the addendum. I was the headline. Not because I demanded the stage, because the story finally told itself. The next morning, I woke to a silence that didn't ache. Not triumph. Not vindication. Just a gentle hush, the kind that settles over a field after the wind leaves. My phone buzzed with a message from Joshua. I'm sorry I never asked. No fluff. No defense. Just 7 words, simple and heavy. I read it once, then turned the screen over. Not in anger, just knowing that sometimes silence is a boundary, not a wound. My mother called twice that afternoon. I let both rings pass unanswered. Not because I wanted her to feel ignored, but because I couldn't bear her trying to reshape something raw and true into something smaller. Not this time. That evening, I walked along the shoreline. The air was cool, salted with the scent of brine and pine needles, and I felt strangely suspended, as if the world was pausing, just long enough to take a breath. I thought of Michelle's voice, thick with emotion. Not admiration for accolades, but for impact. And I thought of all the years I bent myself into silence, mistaking their absence for evidence that I had failed. But now I understood. 2 days later, a letter arrived in the mail. Real paper. Her handwriting. Carol. Michelle shared the video with me. I watched it twice. Then I cried. Not because I didn't believe you'd built something worthwhile, but because I never took the time to find out. I was too focused on what you abandoned. To see what you were walking toward. You did something no one in this family had the courage to attempt. You fell and got up. And in doing so, you helped people find their footing again. Including me. Love. Mom. I read it 3 times, each slower than the last. I didn't frame it. Didn't post about it. I just placed it in a drawer. Because I didn't need a monument. I was living proof. That weekend, I spoke at a local tech summit. There were no news crews, no glossy spreads, just a few dozen people in a school auditorium with calloused hands and hungry eyes. I told them the truth. I wasn't supposed to end up here. I was supposed to follow a plan someone else drew. But I stopped walking their map when I realized I had a compass of my own. They rose to their feet in applause. I didn't cry. But I smiled, not the practice smile I wore at holidays. This one was real. The kind that stretches beneath your ribs. The kind that says, I didn't ask for permission. I just built the road and walked it. 3 months later, Michelle invited me to coffee. Not as Joshua's sister. As Carol. The founder. The builder. We met at a sun-drenched cafe in the city's East End. She was already there, coffee in one hand, a well-worn notebook in the other. I've been thinking, she said. There's a women-led fund I volunteer with. They back mission-driven startups. I showed them what you've done. She pushed the notebook across the table, full of notes, names, strategy. If you're ready to scale Elderbright, we want to help. I looked at her, quiet. You don't owe me anything. Michelle smiled. This isn't about owing. It's about backing a light that the world needs to see farther. And for once, I didn't deflect. I just nodded and let her believe in me. That summer, Elderbright launched its first full-scale national initiative. We called it Digital Dignity. Free workshops in public libraries. Tech literacy hubs in community shelters. Programs tailored for veterans, immigrant seniors, and isolated caregivers. We crossed 250,000 users. One email came from a 92-year-old in northern Alberta. Your site helped me renew my passport online. Next month, I'm flying to meet my great-granddaughter for the first time. Never been on a plane before. Thank you for the courage to try. I sat with that email a long time. Not as validation, but as a small, glowing reminder. Every quiet act has the power to echo. At Joshua and Michelle's wedding, I wore a tailored navy jumpsuit. No one flinched. My mother introduced me with pride that didn't sound rehearsed. This is Carol, my daughter. She leads a national organization. It wasn't exact, but it was honest enough. Later, with a half-empty wine glass in hand, she leaned in and said, You always went your own direction. I used to think that meant you were lost. Now I see, you were just leading. We didn't hug, but we lingered beside one another, grounded and still. And it felt like enough. Later that night, beneath a sky strung with fairy lights, Joshua found me watching the dance floor. Hands in his pockets, the sheepish look of a brother seeing his sibling clearly for the first time. Michelle told me you're speaking at Google. That true? Next month. He raised an eyebrow. You gonna tell them you're my sister? I grinned. You gonna tell them you're mine? He laughed, for real this time. And, just like that, something loosened. The past, perhaps. 2 weeks later, I sent them a small parcel. No note about what it was. No fanfare. Inside was a flash drive containing a customized build of Elderbright, designed for the senior home where Michelle's grandmother had spent her final years. Lifetime access. 0 fees. Personalized support. I didn't post about it. Didn't announce it. Because some offerings don't need headlines. They just need to be George. Quietly. Generously. Because love doesn't always speak loudly. But it always speaks clearly. Tucked inside the parcel was a single note. No fanfare. Just a quiet line in clean script. Some bonds outlast silence. Thank you for helping her find her voice. Michelle phoned the next morning. She didn't speak at first, only breathed into the line, the kind of breath that carries weight. Then softly, through the hush. You didn't have to. I smiled into the quiet. I know. That's exactly why I did. Later that afternoon, back in my kitchen, I printed a line I'd once jotted in the margin of an old notebook and taped it to my fridge. They'll call it failure. Until one day they ask, how you pulled it off. No name. No sting. Just clarity. And beneath it, the faint outline of my reflection in the stainless steel. Smiling. Steady. Recognized. Because this time, the light wasn't borrowed. It didn't come from applause or validation or someone else's approval. It was mine. It had always been.